Welcome to another great Blender dumbed down video. In today's video, we're going to be modeling out the light fixture for our dining room scene. This is, I believe, the 7th video in this series, and we're almost done, guys. You've done a great job. But before we get to cracking into this video, I want to take a quick look at my 3D texture terrain pack that is for sale on Gumroad and on fab.com, so check it out. Alright, so let's go ahead and clear the scene. Let's get screencast also turned on for you guys if you're following along. And I want to then start out by bringing in some reference photos in from PureRef. These are photos that I took of the light. And one of the things I want to bring to your attention is that this light has a good bit of detail around the neck of it. However, we probably won't be modeling that detail. So like the little fleur de lis, we probably won't be putting that in there, because the light is going to be at distance in the scene and you won't see it. So as I've said many times, don't model anything that you don't need to. That's not going to add value to your render. So first of all, let's go in and let's create a circle. And let's change my vertices down to 16 because I don't need 32. It's just a little bit overkill. And I want to size it down in edit mode. And what we're going to create here is we're creating the rim around the glass part of the light bulb that the light bulb sits in. So I'm looking at reference off screen, and I'm basically mimicking the primitive shape of this rim. I want to start with it because it's a separate piece physically on the light. So I'm doing the same thing I do in pretty much every other video. I'm extruding and scaling to get those shapes. I'm now in X-ray mode and I'm moving it down, and what I want to do is, instead of using the solidify modifier on this shape here, I want to manually give it its thickness. So I'm now sculpting on the inside of this shape to give it thickness or depth so we can bevel it. Okay. And in this video, I'm going to cut out less of this process for those of you who have watched it and maybe brand new to Blender and don't really know exactly why I'm doing certain things. So I'm gonna bridge edge loops here to fill in that gap, so that makes this geometry solid. And I want to come in here and I want to give it a name. If you notice other file names in here, these are the previous videos we've done. And like I said, we're going to glue them all together in a scene file at the end of the project. So now what I want to do is I'm coming in here and I'm just gonna kind of filling in some edges here, because I want this little lip to be beveled out now, nice and round on this edge. I'm going to come in here, I'm going to do a nice wide bevel here just so this taper's really nice and clean. And then because these parts right here are a little bit sharper, I'm going to explicitly select these edge loops here, and I'm going to put a little bit tighter bevel on these. Not really tight, but about like that. And I'm changing my miter outer to arc. So if we have bevels that run into each other, it handles it very well. Up here at the top, I want a little bit tighter bevel. So you'll see I'm just gonna bloop, just give it a nice little tight bevel there. And run level 3 sub D. And yeah, this is looking good. Let's go down to shade smooth. And now we can come in here and we can tweak some things if we need to. Let me turn or disable sub D so I can kind of look on the inside here. And I'm just kind of looking around. I'm going to select this edge loop here, and then I'm going to create my next shape from this. So I want my 3D cursor to select it, come back out to object mode, and this will allow me to create a brand new mesh or brand new shape. I'm going to bring in a circle. We want to keep it at 16 just like before. And all I need to do is scale it down. and get it roughly around the opening of that rim. This is going to be the glass portion, or I guess you would call it a glass shade that covers up the light bulb in the lamp. So I want to start out bringing it a little bit lower than that opening of that rim because I want it to start from the inside of the rim. And let's grab it, extrude it up on Z. I'm gonna scale it in a little bit because this is gonna give it that domed or rounded look. I'm gonna extrude up on Z again and do the same thing, just at a different angle. Then I'm gonna extrude it up once more on Z, and I'm gonna bring it in some more. Keep in mind, I am looking off screen at a reference photo of this light. That's a little bit high because it looks like it's gonna make a peak. So all I need to do is hit G on Z and bring it down, and then scale it back in a little bit more. Okay. Keep in mind, this has no thickness. This is just essentially, you can look at it like a shaped flat plane. But now what I want to do is just like we did with the rim, I'm coming in here and manually giving this thickness instead of running solidify. So just bear with me here is why I just kind of tweak on this. And if you notice, I'll bring my line or my edge down to the previous edge on the outside. So when we make these transitions in angle, they're around the same place where the edges are. And really, I mean, you don't have to do it that way, but that just kind of makes everything clean. So we'll just continue to do this all the way down to the bottom. Now what we're going to have is we're going to have two open edges that make up this shape, as you see right here. So all we have to do is we select both of these edges for the outside and the inside, and we just bridge edge loops, and that fills in the gaps. Blender does that work for you. So now we have a solid mesh or solid object right here. Now when we run sub D, if we were to run sub D on it right now, it'll look kind of, and I've used this term in previous videos, a little blah, but we don't want it to look blah. We want to define the shape of this thing. And like I said, the way we do that is by using bevels. I like to call these user-specific bevels. We're telling Blender how we want this thing to be shaped. Let it round everything off where it needs to, but in explicit places in our shape where we do not want it to round off, that's where we tell Blender not to do it with the bevels. So I run a level 3 on this as well, shade smooth, and if you look at the rim, it's jaggedy. It's because we had disabled sub D. I turned it back on, so now everything is nice and tight and clean. And if you look at the topology, it's really clean. So now what I want to do is I want to go in here and I want to start naming these two shapes before everything gets out of hand. As I've said in previous videos, name it whatever you'd like. I'm literally thinking of these names off the fly, off the cuff as I'm recording. I want to put these two files in a collection. I'm going to call it model.light.fixture or dash fixture. I think that's what I ended up changing it to. And then I'm going to do my color thing again so I can visually see very quickly what my model is versus lights versus cameras versus whatever. All right, so we're done with this part. So what we need to do now is we need to continue building. Since this light is designed in such a way where you likely will see the bulb, and if you think about that original image I showed in the first two videos of this project, you can barely see the light at the top of the screen. You can see the bulb from there, so I want to make sure we sculpt in and model in the bulb and that sort of thing. A little bit of detail in there, but not a lot. Because keep in mind, this light is going to be, for the most part, not the main thing in the scene, and it's going to be a bit at a distance. So because of what it is, I'm going to add a little bit of detail in it, but I'm not going to go crazy. More detail than the window blinds that we did in the last video, but not super high resolution detail, because nothing in the scene is really going to require it, to be honest with you. All right, so what I'm doing right now is I'm creating the cap, I guess you would call it that fits over the housing for the light bulb. The wires and everything go through this thing, and this hooks the neck of the lamp into the glass part. So I'm literally just looking at reference and just mimicking the primitive shape, or the building block shape, if you will. Using the same techniques: extrusion and sizing, extrusion, sizing, and then we clean it up by using bevels. All right, so I'm gonna bring it in, and just so we have good topology, I'm gonna fill in some edge loops here to keep those faces from being so long. But first I wanna bring this little opening down a little bit because I'm gonna take a curve and use it to make the neck. I could do it with just a cylinder or a circle, but I just don't think I'm gonna get as smooth of a result by doing that. So what I'm doing now is just like we did in the previous two shapes, I'm explicitly creating depth to the shape. So I'm coming in there and I'm sculpting in the inside of it. And if you notice, I'm in X-ray mode so I can see through the mesh. Just to scale it out, and yet again, just like we did before, I'm getting down to that edge, and then that's where I start doing the transition. This one right here, because you're not going to see all the way through, I can just go straight down. I don't really need to scale this out, extrude and scale this out where that little lip is. I can just bring it all the way down. Nobody's going to see it, so just makes it a little bit easier on us, a little bit less geometry there. All right, so I'm going to isolate the view of this and do the same thing. We'll select these edges, inside and outside. I'm going to bridge these edge loops. Bam, just like so. So now let's put in some support loops in here just to keep these faces from being so long. But before I do that, let's go ahead and bevel while I'm at it. While I'm in a beveling mood, let's go ahead and bevel. And if you notice, I'm not beveling every edge, and that's on purpose. I'm not beveling in areas where I want sub D to just smooth it out. Like I said, you can think of sub D as, I'll say this again, you can think of it as its natural tendency is to smooth everything out and make everything just kind of mush, everything kind of blah. And your job as a 3D artist is to tell sub D where not to blah a mush or smooth everything out, if that makes sense. It took me a long time to look at it that way because I was looking at it the other way. Like I was having to do all the work to get it to smooth. Not that just let sub D do its thing and then I just restrict it. My job is to force the restriction of it smoothing. I hope that explanation is helpful to you guys. All right, so this looks pretty much like the lamp. So far, we're batting 1,000 here. Let's go ahead and name it model.light-cap. I'm trying not to laugh too hard at some of my naming, but my brain right now is focused on modeling it, not naming these layers. So a lot of times too, you can come back in after you modeled it and change it. Not a big deal. So I bring it in a circle. I move my cursor to the selection of that opening. You don't even have to select the whole edge. All you have to do is select a couple of vertices. Just make sure they're across from each other. And what you can do from there is you can move the 3D cursor to selection and it'll slap it in the middle. And then from there, I can bring in my new mesh primitive, which in this case is that circle. What I'm doing is I'm creating like the little ceramic piece with the screw in it that comes down from the light fixture. It's got the wires and stuff hooked in the back, and then the light bulb screws into that. I doubt we're ever gonna see it, but I was just like, yeah, just for giggles here, let's just go ahead and make it so I can show you guys how to make it. It adds a little bit more realism to it if the camera's positioned in such a way where we happen to see it. It'll add a little bit more realism to the model. All right, doing literally the same thing as before. But the only difference is here, I'm sculpting this in X-ray mode. X-ray mode also allows you to select faces, vertices, and edges that are inside or behind another object. You just got to train your eyes to know what you're looking at. That's the biggest thing, because it all can kind of look kind of like a big mess of wireframes. But the more you model, the more you're in Blender, your eyes will get trained to know exactly what to click on. Mine did, and it took a while. It didn't happen overnight, but the more you're in here, the more it'll just start making sense, and you'll get what they call muscle memory, and that's a good thing. So I'm using machine tools. I'm doing my thread action here that you guys see me do in other videos, because I just do not believe in making threads from scratch anymore. I just don't have the patience for it. So this add-on is a big help. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to fill in this top here, because I'm not making wires or anything like that. You'll never see them and it doesn't matter. I just want to fill this in so that light can't pass by it. And if light can't pass by it in a scene, then it's going to be dark. It's going to be a shadow, so it's going to hide imperfections or missing things. All right. So now we've got a grid fill in here. And if you're wondering, I was looking at it from the bottom. If you hit on your numpad on your keyboard, if you hit 7, that shows the top. If you hit Control or Command 7, actually I think it's Control 7 on PC and on the Mac. If you hit Control 7, it's the bottom, so it's opposite. Same with the front, which is 1. Control 1 shows the back. I mean, that's pretty much how you navigate with the keyboard. And you'll see I navigate with the keyboard quite often. So I'm grabbing all these pieces together here, and I want that glass piece, because it's the biggest piece, to be the parent, and I'm parenting everybody to that glass piece, as you just saw. Now I'm moving my cursor to selected, because what I want to do right here is I want to bring in another mesh primitive, and I'm essentially going to create a Ghetto Fabulous light bulb. I'm not trying to model a light bulb to go on Sketchfab or Blender Kit. I'm just making something that looks like a light bulb that will pass the test, the sniff test, as they say. All right, so take a big giant UV sphere, gonna shove it up in there after we scale it down a little bit. Now I don't want it to look like a floating ball up in there, so you're gonna see how this gets handled. Let's just get it kind of close in terms of positioning, because when you look at the light, the bulb, part of the bulb actually sticks down and protrudes down from the light. So now I'm gonna go up here, I'm in X-ray mode, I'm gonna select those top verts up there, I'm gonna open them up, and then I'm going to extrude and scale. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a circle shape out of the top of this bulb here and try to match it to the diameter of that piece that we made just a minute ago with the screw threads in it. And I want it to mimic it screwing up into that piece, if that makes sense. I'm going to go ahead and grid fill, just keep good clean topology. And I'm going to bring in a loop cut here. I'm going to spread it out, and I'm going to run threads on this. I didn't need to, but I figured for the sake of showing you guys why, like the purpose of it, that's the only reason why I did it. I really didn't need to, because you'll never see it in this extra geometry. Okay. So now, just to get this in place, I'm just kind of, right now I'm looking to make sure that the threads are not eaten inside of the little ceramic housing piece there. Now I'm just kind of positioning it up into place for you. And bam, now we got a light bulb in there. So now I'm going to run shade smooth. There's no need to run a sub D on this. It's already smooth, it's already round. And I just gave it a name, model.light.bulb. And I want to keep my parenting going. So I parent everybody together. And as I move one, it moves everybody else. So now, because I did a lot of extrusions from circles, I wanted to check my normals, so they're off. So I'm selecting what's red, hitting A to select everything, and hitting Shift N to recalculate the normals. So Blender will determine what the outside of it is, the outside face of it is, or I should say the outside surface of the normal is versus the inside. And as you see, I'm recalculating all these. I'm gonna clean all these up, because when your normals are off, you get weird stuff when you run bellows, you get weird stuff sometimes when you're running textures and that sort of thing. So it's something to always be mindful of. If you take a circle or a plane or anything like that and you start extruding from it to make shapes, just be mindful to check your normals. All right, so now we're gonna start making the neck. So I'm gonna bring in a single vertices that's a curve. You technically could do this with a single vertices and build it out. I just like working with curves because for stuff like this, it's just easier and it's more forgiving. So I'm just making a basic shape of how the neck comes out from that lamp and the different angles that make up the shape. Keep in mind, it's going to be, the end result's going to be smooth, but we got to start out by building it with angles. The less amount of angles you have, actually, the better shape you get. So this part for me personally is not the easiest because I don't do this a lot. Luckily, I don't have to do this a whole lot, but I do use this technique to make cords and wires and that sort of thing. But it works. Sometimes it just takes me a couple of tries of getting the shape I really want because I'm OCD about it a little bit. So as you can see right here in the video, I'm reworking it again. I already put the thickness and everything on it. This helps me actually see it a little bit better with the thickness instead of just that dark line. So now we're just kind of coming out, making that basic shape. What I'm doing here is I'm selecting both of those verts and I'm making sure they're aligned on the Z on Z. I didn't want one higher than the other one, in other words. So I'm bringing that neck down about where it snakes off and goes parallel or goes horizontal. And I think that's going to make a good shape. I run a level 3 sub D on it. Looks pretty good. I'm selecting those vertices because it looks a little far away and I'm just bringing it in. And that, my friends, almost nails it. I'm going to make a copy of this curve in case we screw up and we have to start over. And essentially I'm making a backup. So I'm moving it off screen here a little bit and I'm going to put it in its own collection in case we screw up and have to go back, which I don't think we're going to screw up, but it's just a good habit to do when you get into a more complex model. Create a new collection and I'm going to call it original dash work. And this could be anything. It could be that curve. It could be whatever. And I'm just going to give it a color just so I very quickly can visualize and see what it is. Now, the other curve that we created, the duplicate, I want to rename it because it's not going to be a curve much longer. I'm going to call it model.light.neck. And I'm going to convert this to a mesh because we no longer need it to be a curve. And just that quickly, we converted it into a mesh. Okay, so I'm removing sub D. Let's try to convert it to a mesh again because it converted it to a mesh with the level 3 sub D applied and it was just too much going on with the geometry. So now what I'm coming in here and doing is I'm selecting these faces and I want to delete them. Because it's making tries, it's making triangles. And I want to do extrude and size and then I want to grid fill it. Okay. And now I'm going to isolate the shape. Now that this is a mesh, and if you look in the outliner, which is like the little menu on the far right side where we're renaming all this stuff, that's called the outliner in Blender. If you look and you look at the icon to the left, it looks like an inverted triangle. That shows that it's a mesh. Okay, I'm gonna grid fill this one the same way, and then I'm gonna grab this edge loop here, and I want to put a nice little tight little bevel on it. So when we do go back and run sub D, the end of it won't look like a balled up fist. It won't look like it's gnarly, because if you don't do this, it will look gnarly on the end because it's basically trying to round everything up. All right, so now we run that level 3 again, and that way I don't have to apply to level 3 yet, not unless I just want to. And just like that, we have a neck for a light. So now I'm going in here, I'm selecting everything, I'm doing my parenting, I'm parenting that neck to everything else that's been parented. I want to move my 3D cursor over a little bit. And I'm going to bring in a cylinder because right here is a decorative piece of the light. I call it, I don't know what it is, but it's almost like it serves as a weight to keep everything from moving around. But you'll see what it is. I'm not an expert on lights. I know how to wire them, but I don't know what this stuff's called. All right, so I'm going to bring in that cylinder. I put it in a loop cut, spread it out. And if you notice, the new cylinder object I created was in my original work collection. So I just moving it over so in the right place. So if you make something, don't see it, look in another collection that you created. Sometimes it'll drop it in there. And I'm moving my cursor to that selected face at the top. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the cap that goes on this piece here by bringing in a circle, scaling it down. And we're going to literally, guys, we're going to do the same thing we've been doing throughout this whole video thus far. Extrude in size, just to mimic the primitive shape. The main difference between this model and things we've done thus far in this project, there were other things that were a lot easier because they were more angular. This just has more bends and twists and curves. And there's some techniques that you're going to see in making this that we haven't used a lot, but I have used in previous videos, like case in point, the ceiling fan video. If you guys go back and watch that one, That's probably the most advanced thing I've made on the channel thus far, is that ceiling fan. But I use a lot of cool techniques in it. But some of those same techniques you'll see I use here. All right, so I'm just basically making this shape. Keep in mind, I'll say this again if you guys are bouncing around in the video. I'm looking at this thing in PureRef on a separate monitor. So I tried to bring PureRef in on the screen where I'm recording, but I found it was distracting, and I'd just rather show it to you in the beginning and then just model it out, just to give you context. All right, so I'm grid filling this just like before. And if you notice, I don't leave these open as n-gons or anything like that. And that's just me being respectful to you all who are looking at a career in game development or game art. Typically that gets frowned upon. Even though all this stuff, when it gets rendered, it gets converted into triangles anyway. But I try not to show you with like lazy modeling with n-gons. So I'm gonna set my origin to the 3D cursor, which is in the center of this weight. This is going to allow us to run a mirror modifier, and it's gonna put it at the pivot point. Basically, the pivot point for the reflection of this is gonna be where that 3D cursor is. And we just changed the origin to that, so that's where we wanted it to flip it at. So that's why it flipped it perfectly on the other side of that cylinder. So let's go ahead in here and let's bevel some stuff. Bevel these edges here. I won't bother explaining this again because you guys now are experts and know what sub D actually does and why we use it and how we use it. So you can just kind of sit back a little bit and like kind of watch me do it. All right, so we got the part of that first cap done, but it has like some decorative pieces popping off of it. So what I want to do here, just so you guys know, I'm bringing in loop cuts just to keep those faces from being so long, and I'm using eight edge loops here. Why? Because 8 is divisible by 4. It's just a good rule of thumb in modeling. So we're gonna do this down here at the bottom because I have applied the mirror modifier. And I'm gonna do the grid fill down here as well. This will allow us to pick faces to build some of the other decorative pieces down here at the bottom from. So let's try that again. I had an issue there. And I wanna go ahead and bevel this off so when I run sub D on this piece here, it doesn't do the crazy smoothing there. Run shade smooth. All right, so now I want to come in here and select the entire hierarchy of this glass shape because there are 5 lights that go around this thing. So now I'm going to run the spin tool, and notice I am in top orthographic mode because it's going to spin it on whatever axis I'm looking at it on. And now I've got all 5 lights that are identical. So that's done. So now I'm going to go here back to this little bottom part of this cap. I'm gonna select a face, I'm gonna inset, and I'm gonna go back to front ortho, and I'm gonna start dragging it down. And honestly, for me, I don't care if this is like perfect, exactly like the light is. It's close enough. It's going to fool the eye because you're gonna see this light at distance in the scene. And to be honest with you, I don't even know if I'm gonna illuminate it or not. I probably will, but it won't be as bright as the sunlight coming through the windows. Because the sunlight's gonna be part of the character in the scene from that original photo I showed you guys. All right. So let's go here and do some cleanup, grabbing some edges, and doing some bevels, and all that fun stuff. And if you notice, sometimes I will do, let me back up because I missed an edge here. And the reason why I left this in the video is I want you guys to be mindful of this, that this can happen to anybody. But you just need to be mindful of it so that if you miss an edge, you go back and fix it so it bevels right. Let's see. So now what I'm trying to do is I'm going to bring these verts out a little bit, and I'm trying to mimic a shape that is typically used to create a circle. but I'm not using loop tools to do it. I very well could have, but I'm just not. I'm just showing you how to do this manually if you don't have loop tools, even though you should, because it comes with Blender. But you don't need it. That's what I'm saying. All right. Cursor to selected. Bring in a quad sphere. And I want to size it down. Reason why I'm pausing here is I'm kind of looking at the top faces of this quad sphere, and I'm wondering if I should connect it with the quad geometry of that decorative piece above it, or should I just stick it up on there and call it a day? I'm trying to figure out if it's worth the effort. I decided to just stick it up there and call it a day and just parent it. But like I told you guys, I model this stuff pretty much in real time for my videos because I want you to see me make mistakes. That's normal. Because as you're making them while you're learning, hopefully you won't get disgruntled with the software and give up. I don't want you to give up. I want you guys to keep at it. And if you see me screwing up, somebody who's been modeling for 2 years now, somebody who's been getting paid to do this for 2 years now, if you see me screw up and admit it, I want you to realize it's very common. All right, so I'm grabbing these verts here at the top, and I'm essentially doing the same thing. I'm trying to get a circle shape out of it. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit these faces, and I want to scale that in so we don't have overlap. And I'm gonna inset, and then I'm gonna bring up a shape here, a decorative piece. And I'm kind of going back and forth between PureRef and Blender, and I'm looking in detail because I've got some pretty close-up shots of what the top of this looks like, and just making sure that it looks like the lamp. This part here, I'm trying to get a little bit more accurate. And modeling it's pretty straightforward. All right. Let's bring this little piece here up. And we're going to scale it out. And we're going to bring it up again. And we're going to scale it back in. And it's going to make like a nice pointed shape there at the top. But I don't want it too pointed. And just kind of bring it down just so the sizing looks right. And then from here, we're going to run a hook in it. And this is going to be the part like the loop that runs into the chain that hangs from the ceiling. And then we'll create the plate, protective or decorative plate, so you don't see the hole in the ceiling where the wire, where they drilled a hole and ran the wires down. That little decorative piece, we're going to do that. We're going to do that part last up here. So I'm selecting these edges. I'm just kind of doing my bevels for the same reason as we've done them everywhere else. And just kind of keep in mind like where I put bevels and where I don't put bevels. And then in the video, look and see how it affects it once I apply sub D. And I'm doing a level 3 sub D on pretty much everything on here. I've got the computer that can do level 3, and to be honest with you, I'm digging level 3 better than level 2. It's just a little bit, it's a lot more geometry. It just looks a little bit cleaner. I like it. I've been using level 3 a lot more lately in my work. Unless I'm doing stylized stuff, I'll do a level 2. Rarely do I do a level 4 or 5 or anything. That's almost overkill, but 3 for me is my sweet spot. All right, so I'm bringing in a torus, which is essentially a donut. And what I'm trying to do, so it doesn't look as much like a donut, it looks more like a ring. I'm playing with the major and minor radius values. I don't need 48 segments. It can be a little jaggedy. I don't really mind. I'm doing 16 just like I did with the circle. Major and minor segments are the same, and I'm going to scale it down. I'm going to rotate it on X. So when I look at it in front ortho, it's facing right at me. This allows me to make sure stuff's aligned right. It's just easier for me to work this way. So we're going to scale it down just a little bit more because I'm bringing a ring in here, and I'm going to basically stick it in this shape right here. Keep in mind, I'm looking at it from the front, and you are too, but eventually I need to look at it from side ortho and make sure that it's aligned properly on the side as well, as we've done here. So now this is done, and I'm selecting all these shapes in here, and I am parenting them together. And as you guys can see, this light is really starting to take shape here. And now I'm going to grab all of this with that model.light.center, and I'm going to parent all of this stuff together, and I want to move it up. Because when I got back to looking at the light and where the lamps were in terms of that centerpiece, I had the centerpiece a little lower than it should be, so I'm just kind of sizing it up. And now you guys see why I'm not merging these vertices into one shape. It totally screws you up when you want to tweak and edit something later. So now what I want to do is I want to bring in another torus. I'm going to change it to rotate it in my view. I scaled it down, and now I'm skewing it on X. And as you can tell, I'm making a chain link. Doesn't need to be perfect. I'm creating a second one by duplication, and right now they're completely overlapping, so I'm slowly rotating it. Notice I'm not going 90 degrees from it. I'm going kind of at an angle from it because realistically, it's going to look more like this. And I'm just kind of tweaking it in placement. So it looks like there's actually force on one ring touching the next ring. Because it needs to hold up this heavy lamp. Or this heavy, I guess you would call it chandelier. So let's go ahead and give this a name. Alright, and it's in the appropriate collection. And now I'm going to move it over the center of the light itself. And if you notice the little circle there, that means my center is off. My geometric center is off. So now I'm going to go to set origin to geometry. So that puts it right in the center. Now I can pivot it right on the Z-axis perfectly. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking that first link, putting it into place. I want to touch our ring that we made that's connected to the light itself. And I'm getting it close. And if you eat up in it just a hair, that's okay. Because keep in mind that when I run sub D on it, it's going to suck some of the size of this down. So keep that in mind as well. I'm getting as close as I can, but sub D is going to shrink it in a little bit. There you go. I don't know if you guys saw that, but it did. All I need to do is create 2 of these chain links. And then watch this. We're going to save ourselves some work. So I'm going to go in my modifier stack, and I'm going to create an array modifier. I'm going to go in on the Y, and I want a constant offset, not a relative offset in this case. And I'm just going to duplicate how many times I want to go up, which I believe I ended up doing 6. Yep. And what I want to do is I want to parent all this stuff together. And I'd say we're like 95% done with the modeling here. Just parenting everybody, make sure everybody's happy. And now at the top, we need to create like a little, an adapter, if you will, like a connection piece. And then we need to create that base plate. So I move my cursor up there to the top. I'm bringing in a mesh primitive of a circle. And I just want to bring it straight up. Because I'm creating that like a connection piece that fits into our plate. Okay. Same things, guys. Extrusion, sizing, fill grid, bevels. I mean, I'm building it pretty much everything like this. Grid fill becomes handy here because it allows me, like I said, to select faces and do other stuff. I can tie the geometry together pretty well this way. All right, so I'm gonna grab these 4 faces down here at the bottom of this shape, and I'm basically just gonna bring it down like a big block. Make it look like that chain link is connected right in there. I really don't need to do much anything else. I'm gonna do an inset, and I wanna bring this up to make it look like the chain's going through it, even though it technically isn't. And I'm gonna come in here and bevel some edges, because when we run sub D, you know what that does now. And I wanna put some support loops in here as well, just so we don't have extra long faces. Okay, that looks good. That's looking good. Make sure to get it up here at the top, because anywhere we miss it when we run that sub D, it's not gonna look pretty. Yeah, let's put one here too. Yeah. Faces don't have to be the exact same size, but let's try to keep them fairly close. Just makes everything nice and clean. And it keeps you from having issues with your texturing. So level 3 sub D, shade smooth. And bam, we got this part done. And now the last thing left to do is scale this down where it looks right, position it properly, and then we'll do our base plate next. I want another circle. I want to scale it. And I want the opening of this circle, or the initial diameter of this circle, to fairly match the diameter of the connection piece. I could have duplicated, I could have selected an edge from that connection piece, that outer edge. I could have done Shift D and duplicated it and built it off of that, but I'd rather do it this way for now, just to show you guys. Notice we extruded it up, we scaled it out. I'm making the bottom part of that plate, and then when I scroll out and look, you'll see it's a little bit too small. So instead of me scaling off on every axis, I want to omit the Z axis. So when you hit the scale, you hit Shift Z when you scale, and it'll scale on every axis but the Z axis. In this case, I don't think I ended up needing to do it that way. I just selected different verts and scaled those out. But had I had everything selected, that's how I would have had done it. So let's put in some edge loops here, like so. And I will run a solidify modifier on this one. And I want to hold down Shift so it doesn't run crazy with my range. And let's apply it. By applying it, it now allows me to go in here and select this real geometry and do my bevels. If I would have left it not applied, then I would not have been able to select these edges and done bevels on them. And this is the part that fits up in your ceiling. And I want to make sure we run shade smooth on that too. Bam, there you go. All right, so let's go back in here and let's take a look at it. Oh yeah, almost forgot. We need to do bevels on the inside of this too. Okay, nice and clean. Bam. Look at that, guys. Nice, clean work here. Let's save our file. So select all these guys, and I'm actually merging the geometry of these with Command J as one piece, and then I'm going to give this a name. I called it a mount, but it don't matter. And I'm doing the whole parent thing again. So now we're going to move into materials, because we're done modeling. You've done a great job on the modeling. If you've made it this far, it gets real easy. So now I'm going to go ahead and select my rims, and I'm going to create a material called pewter, and I'm just going to eyeball the color. I'm going to get it close. I know pewter is a light gray with a tinge of yellow in it, on the reddish yellow side on the color wheel. And we're going to make it metallic, and I'm just going to play with the roughness. Good enough. Start selecting all the pieces that should be pewter, and I'm just going here and just selecting that from that drop menu, like so. And I'm gonna show you, if you watch this video carefully, I'm gonna show you different ways of doing these materials, or selecting them. So instead of doing it from that drop menu every single time, I'm gonna show you an alternate way of doing this so that will save you time. I can select everything at once that I want to have that pewter color. And then I select one object that already has it, hit Control L, and then link materials. And then it propagates to all of them in one shot. Okay, so that's another way of doing the same thing. So we've got all the metal parts of this thing already done. So now I'm creating a new material. I've got the little glass dome part selected. And I'm gonna call this material.frosted.glass. I'm gonna kick the transmission up, but not all the way up. I don't want to be completely see-through. I'm going to crank down my roughness, but I'm going to give it quite a bit of roughness, and it gives it that frosted glass look. I mean, technically I could have played with the IOR too, the index of refraction, but for the sake of this right now, I'm just leaving it. I may go back in later if I feel like I need to and change it. I gave the glass bulbs the same texture, only as a starting point, because when I go in here and select these light bulbs, I don't want the light bulbs to look exactly the same way. I'm selecting the ceramic portion that the light bulb screws into, and I'm gonna make a separate material for it. Nothing fancy. Don't boil the ocean over this. Nobody's really gonna see this. It really doesn't matter for that part, for that particular piece. Now that the light bulbs have the same material, I just did that as a starting block, and then I hit like the copy. So it copies this material off into a new material. So now the bulbs have a separate material that's initially based off of the ones we did for the domes or the shades. So now I'm coming in here in the shader editor because I want these light bulbs to be lit up. I want them to emanate light. So I'm bringing in the mix shader node, and then on the second one, I'm going to bring in an emission node, and essentially I'm just going to play with the strength. Now we're in Eevee, so you're not going to really see it as much. So let's change our render engine to cycles. Let's go to render mode. And now you can see the ray tracing that's being done on these, and you'll get a more realistic depiction of what the emission strength is looking like. Minus any bloom or anything like that. I don't want to put bloom in it yet. If I do bloom, we'll do it in the compositor on the scene file. Right now it don't matter. All right. So I'm just playing with emission values here. And I mean, we're essentially done with this part of the project. So if you guys like this kind of video and this content, like and subscribe for more. We have maybe two videos left in this series. So hope to see you guys there. We can complete this one and start a new project. Thanks for joining. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for viewing. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.